We are learning the Sicha in Chelek Yutes, the Sicha on Chamisha Asa Ba'av, on page 80. The shir today is being learned L'Nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Koltman. This is an absolutely amazing Sicha. It's a siyum on Masechta Tainis. The Rabbi will explain the last Mishnah and then a Braise and the conclusion of the Gemara, going through detail by detail, explaining everything in a much deeper way. Just the questions of the Sicha continues all the way till Sivav. Many details in the Sicha and everything is brought together in the most beautiful way. Es steht in Mishnah, Seif Masechta Tainis. It says in the last Mishnah of Masechta Tainis, Amar Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, Leihaye Yamim Tovim LiYisrael Kechamisha Asa Ba'av V'Chayom HaKippurim. The Yidden do not have any Yom Tov that compares to Chamisha Asa Ba'av, the 15th of Av and Yom Kippur. Shebehen b'nois Yerushalayim, the Yesh Gersim b'nois Yisrael. It's on this day that the daughters in Yerushalayim or b'nois Yisrael, Yitzes b'chlilavan shu'ulin, they would go out in white garments, in borrowed white garments, v'choyles b'kramim, and they would dance in the vineyards. What would they say? They would sort of present themselves there for a shidduch, and they would say to the young men coming there, Bachor sana enecha, young man, raise up your eyes. See what you choose for yourself. Al titen enecha b'noi, do not pay attention to beauty. Ten enecha b'mishpacha, instead pay attention to the family. Because the pasuk says, Sheker achein, hevel hayofi, isha, yiras Hashem, hitasalo. Grace is false and beauty is in vain. A woman who fears Hashem should be praised. And another pasuk it says, Va'omer, tnula mipriya deha, v'alalu b'ashar ma'aseh. Give her the fruits of her hands and let her be praised in the cities with her deeds. So both of these psukim show this point that there's no point in paying attention to the beauty, but rather look for what's the real right quality. So right here in the Mishnah there are two obvious questions. Aleph, number one, from the psukim is da araya not of them was them gesagt al titen enecha b'nei. It's clear from the psukim that you should not pay attention to beauty. Because beauty is in vain and it is false. However, where do you see in the pasuk? There's no proof for what the Mishnah continues. There's that you should pay attention to the family. It doesn't say that in the pasuk at all. On the contrary, what does it say in the pasuk? In the psukim is mefurish, Isha yiras Hashem itasalo. A woman that's God-fearing is praiseworthy. She should be praised for her actions. As in Meile besteht in Yiras Hashem und Meisim, und nicht bloß in Yichus Mishpacha. The Meile is not the level that you should look at. What a woman can reach is not as far as her Yichus, her family, but rather her actions, her Yerushalayim. So why does the Mishnah not say this? Based, another question there is, wie shayach, how is it possible to say, as alle b'nois Yerushalayim, all of the girls in Yerushalayim, definitely amongst them were those that came from families that were not necessarily with the most prestigious lineage. They should all say, look at our family, marry us for who we are because of the family we come from. The Kashi is noch starker, the question on the Mishnah is even stronger. In the Braise of the Mishnah, the Gemara quotes a Braise that elaborates on what the Mishnah says, as the beautiful amongst them would say, look at beauty. The ones that had a distinguished lineage said, look at our family. And then the ugly ones would say, acquire what you take for the sake of heaven. Which means, as bloistim yichasis haben gesagt, only the ones that had a good yichus would say, look at our family. Heint, wie sagt the Mishnah? Beifen stami b'nois Yerushalayim, oimreis tenenecha b'mishpacha. So how could the Mishnah to say that all of b'nois Yerushalayim would say, look at our family? Mefarshim learning. So there's a pshat that Mefarshim say to explain this Mishnah that it actually fits together with what it says in the Braise that was just quoted here. As Euchen Mishnah is an ungedated, beremes, die drei verschiedene Amiris von die drei Suge b'nois Yerushalayim was very nice gerechnet in the Braise. The three categories that are mentioned in the Braise are actually hinted in the words of the Mishnah. The Werte, when the Mishnah begins with the words and it says, saying, raise your eyes and look at what you're choosing. Zogandi of Yafiyas. That's the beautiful girl speaking to look and pay attention to their beauty. As muzal zenzer yoifi. In the Braise she'ene isha elul yoifi. In the Braise it says Hashem created a woman for her beauty. Then when the Mishnah continues and says, Al titenei necha benoi, tenei necha b'mishpacha, do not pay attention to beauty, rather look at the family, zogdim yochasais. So those are the ones with prestigious lineage that are speaking. Und the michuarais, those that are ugly, was haben it kinchein, was kut mitzad yichos, they have no grace, that comes from a good family, und it ken yoifi, and no beauty either, nor blois maisim tevim, all they have is their good deeds. Zogen, they're the ones that are saying what's quoted in the pasuk. Sheker achein vehevel hayofi isha yiris Hashem hitis alal v'oimet tnu goyim v'alu b'sharem maseh. They just pay attention to our yiris shemayim and our good deeds. Al derech v'yeshtet in Braise, this corresponds to what the Braise says regarding this category of girls. As they zogen chu mekchachem l'shum shemayim. Acquire, take what you acquire for the sake of heaven. So the Braise and the Mishnah are actually corresponding to one another. So this answers the first question that we asked before, that you don't see any raya in the pasuk for this, that you should look at family. The pasuk that the Mishnah quotes is actually not coming to prove what it says before, look at family. That was a separate statement that was said by a different category of girls, by the ugly ones. They quoted this pasuk. 3 different parts of the Mishnah, similar to the 3 parts in the Braise. Their Pirish is aber nit glatik. However, it's a beautiful pshat, but it doesn't smoothly fit in Pashtus Lashon Mishnah, in the words of the Mishnah. Weil, number 1, Aleph. Von Stimis Lashon Mishnah, B'nei Yerushalayim, Uma Hayu Oimris. From the simple way the Mishnah puts it, without elaborating, it seems that when it says B'nei Yerushalayim, what would they say? Is mashma as als versteht weiter in the Amire from Bnei Yerushalayim stam alle. So it seems that everything that it says afterwards in the Mishnah refers to all Bnei Yerushalayim, and they would all say this that it says there, not dividing it into 3 separate categories. Beis, another question there is, for was bringt the Mishnah protim? Why does the Mishnah add certain details here? Und dafke die protim, and specifically these details from the Amiris von jeden Sog, und nicht der Lashon und protim shebe Braise. If it's true that the whole arichas in the Mishnah is to hint to the 3 different categories, so why does the Mishnah write it in such a way, putting certain details regarding each category that it says? In the first category, sa, na, einacha, or re'eh. V'adarabeh. Seemingly, the Mishnah should be much clearer and much more concise. L'chayre v'od given masim as the Mishnah versus davakotze v'koil and yonim rabim. A Mishnah, the style of the writing of the Mishnah is very concise, and in a few words it could include a lot. To write very bekitzer and say clearly what each category said, similar to what it says in the Braise. The beautiful ones say, look at our beauty. The ones with a yichah say, look at our family. And then the ugly ones say, take what you're taking for the sake of heaven. Very clear, concisely, as the Braise puts it. Und die Braise soll dann auch meisiv sein of the Mishnah, the Prate, Amira. And if anything, it's the Braise that usually adds more than what it says in the Mishnah, and the Braise could add more details. Bacher sanach v'cholo, asking the young man, lift up your eyes, take a look, pay attention. Additional details here that the Mishnah wouldn't say. Al titene necho benoi, and then also the ones that have good families say, don't pay attention to the beauty. Shekerachein, the whole pasuk of Shekerachein, Bashar Masel. These are all additional details that the Braise does not mention. So if anything, it would make more sense for the Mishnah to say the 3 categories very clearly and concisely, and then the Braise would add more details. Befrat, as ba'ofen zeh, wollt euch die Mishnah kamat ein teises v'ariches. So then the Mishnah, without adding any additional details or words or points that are not necessary here, klar areis gebracht, as in 3 besondere amiris von 3 Sugi b'nei Yerushalayim. Then it would be clear that the Mishnah is actually speaking about 3 different categories of b'nei Yerushalayim. The Riber, so therefore looking at the way the Mishnah is written, is mistavet to learn, and it's logical to understand and learn this Mishnah as Ma'aya Imres, when it says, what would they say? Alle B'nai Yerushalayim hayotzes, all of the B'nai Yerushalayim that came out, but zitzich zum ganzen Hemshach von weiten Dingered. That Ma'aya Imres, it goes on everything. The whole entire continuation is all one statement that all B'nai Yerushalayim would say. And the Braise is meisif of the Mishnah mefaret, and then the Braise comes to add and elaborate more and says, as in Zugam to the Amira, was alle Bnei Yerushalayim haben gesagt, in addition to the statement that they all said, hat jedes Zug Besonder zugegeben noch an Amira, was es behesem to the Bonis von dem Zug allein. In addition, there were different categories that added something unique that is appropriate for them to add, in addition to what they already had said, that you should look at family. So this has to be explained. What exactly, why is there this one general statement that all Bnei Yerushalayim would say, and then this additional Amira that each one separately would say? Euch in the Braise darf man verstehen. Looking at the details of what it says in the Braise regarding the three categories of these girls, so we have the following questions here. Aleph number 1. Was für an Art hat die Amira von der Yafyafia ist nu ein Neichen le Yafi? How's there any place for this that the Braise says that the beautiful girls would say, pay attention at beauty? The Mishnah quotes the pasuk that says that the beauty is in vain. There's no reason to pay attention to this at all. As the Yafyafiyas Gufa sagen doch, wie steht in Mishnah, as the Rebbe just explained before, that the Yafyafiyas also said that general statement that it says in the Mishnah, which is Al titene necha benoi sheker achein ve'evel hayofi. Do not pay attention to the beauty. Lepirish Hanal, as was explained before, as da sagen, alle b'nei Yerushalayim. This is something they all say. Beis. Another question here is, mit was ist kchu mekchachem l'shem shemayim atam tzenemen mechuaris dafke? This that they try to convince a bacher to come and marry them, so they say, take what you're taking and acquiring for the sake of heaven. How is that a reason to take somebody that's mechuare specifically, an ugly girl? You could take anybody, and it could be l'shem shemayim. But what is there about this that would convince you to take someone with the quality of being ugly? Mefarshim lernen, so the Mefarshim that Rebbe quoted before say, as euch de mechuaris haben meisem teivim. Even these that are ugly, but they still have good deeds. So when they say take for the sake of heaven, so what they're saying is, as mizonit cooking of yaifi, don't look at beauty, or mishpach or family, nor blois of Yerushalayim, or meisim teivim, shum shamayim. Just look at our fear of heaven and the good deeds that we have. So that's the quality that they're trying to draw attention to. Aber der Pirish fadet beer. But this explanation requires additional explanation. Warum euch die Amiri von dem Yechasses? Tnu enechem le mishpache, even those that had prestigious lineage, and said, look at our family, kommt bepashtos aroisbrengen, the ruchni is the gemeile von Yichas mishpache. What are they talking about regarding Yichas? Does Yichas matter? It only matters because of any spiritual meile that you get from this Yichas. Wie der Taisis Yomtiv sagt, shemen astam ham Yechasses and Yireis Hashem. As the Taisis Yomtiv says, being from a good family is definitely a reason that brings more Yiras Hashem. Kommt ois, as euch der Beiche sein, dem Yichasses is the Shum Shemayim. So when you are choosing a girl from a family with good Yichas, it's also only for the Ruchni is the quality, and it's also the Shem Shemayim. Is ne was besteht Yisrael from the Shum Shemayim by the Mechuaris? So how is there any advantage that choosing specifically from the Mechuaris, that is the Shem Shemayim, more than the others? The Hemshech to the Braise now. Now we move on to the next part in the Gemara itself. After it brings this Braise, bring the Gemara a Maimer from Ula Bira, Omer Abelazar, and he said as follows: Und mit vet nestein de Mesechta. These are the last words of Mesechta Tainus. Ased HaKadosh Baruch Hu lasis machal et tzadikim. In the future, Hashem will make a big dance with the tzadikim. V'hu yoshiv beinayim, and Hashem sits amongst them began Eden, and this is in Gan Eden. In each one of these tzaddikim will point with their finger at the Eibishter. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, this is our God. Kivinu lo, we hoped for Him. V'yeshienu, and He has helped us. Zeh havaya kivinu lo, this is the God that we have hoped for. Nagila v'nisbacha b'yeshuase. Let us rejoice and be glad with His salvation. That's the conclusion of the Masechta. Now the Shaykhis from them Maimer to the Mishnah is verstandig bepashtus. The connection of this to what it says in the Mishnah is simply understood. Behemshach to them was the Mishnah that said as Bnei Yerushalayim yotzes v'chaylos, that the daughters of Yerushalayim would go out and dance. Kamay lachol b'machaylos. Rashi there says the word v'chaylos means to dance in a circle. B'kramim in the vineyards. Chulu bring the Gemara the Maimer as asa the Kadosh Baruch Hu lasis machal tzadikim chulu. That's similar. Hashem will also create a dance in a circle for the tzaddikim. So it's dance and dance. Es ist aber mistaver, however, it's logical to say, as the kishur von dem Maimon mit der Mishnah und Breise, the connection of this statement of the Gemara with what it speaks about before in the Mishnah and the Breise is nit mitzad an einzigen Prat bei Ihnen. It's not just this one detail of dance and dance. As da, wie in the Mishnah, Breise, redt sich wegen am Machel, speaks about a dance as well. Nor mitzad kama v'kama pratim von dem Machel v'stein and hemshech ha'maimer. It's also because of certain details, more details that are mentioned here regarding this dance. V'hu yoshev b'neim chulu v'chol echad v'echad mara be'etzboi shenemar v'amar. All the details that it says here. That Hashem sits amongst them, they all point their finger to Hashem, and then they say, Hine lekeinu zeh. All these details are connected to what we spoke about before regarding the dance of the girls. So this has to be explained. Additionally, it has to be said, von dem, was the Gemara bringt der Maime besmiches de Breise. The fact that this statement of the Gemara is quoted right after it brings the Breise, welche kommt behemschich zu die Amira von Bnei Yerushalayim. And it's following the different statements that the various different groups of girls of Bnei Yerushalayim would say. And it's not quoted in the Gemara as a separate statement, connecting it back to what it says in the Mishnah, that there was a dance then, and there'll be a dance in the future. Or anything similar to this. Is mashma as der Maima also the Kadosh Baruch Hu chulu at hemshich v'shayches im teichen abraisa. Seems like that this statement of the Gemara here is connected specifically to the dance of the Bnei Yerushalayim, not the way it's quoted in the Mishnah, but the way it's quoted in the Braise. Wegen die drei sugi amire von the Bnei Yerushalayim, and specifically the fact that in the Braise it speaks about dividing the Bnei Yerushalayim in three different categories. So what's the connection specifically to the Braise? Okay, now let's take a look at the details of what it says here in this statement of the Gemara. In dem Siyama Masechta gefit men euch advar Pele in Pirushe Rashi v'Taisis. If we take a look at what Rashi and Taisis says about this last statement, so there's something which seems to be a big wonder here. Oif Mare be'etzboi. The words of Mare be'etzboi is Rashi mefarish. V'oimer ze avai kivinu lo v'yeshienu ze avai kivinu lo negilo v'nismacham b'shuasei. That's what Rashi says. Oich Taisvis sagt al derech ze. Taisis seems to be saying the exact same thing. V'zel l'shaynoi. Kol echad ve'echad mara kadosh baruch hu be'etzboi shenemar hine elkeinu zeh kivinu lo v'goymer nagila v'nismacha b'shuasei. That's what Taisis says on the Gemara. Is tamua b'yaiser. So the obvious question is, wasn't Rashi v'Taisis meisif if then was is mefurish in Gemara? What are Rashi and Taisis adding here to what's clear in the Gemara? The pasuk is quoted in the Gemara. They just seem to be quoting exact word for word what it says in the Gemara. So we can explain that there's actually an argument here between Rashi and Taisus. As Rashi, with Taisus, zene mechulik in dem Pirish from the Werte, shenemar v'oma b'yemehu hine goymer. When the Gemara brings the proof from the pasuk, v'oma b'yemehu, so Rashi and Taisus understand differently what exactly are we learning from the pasuk. Rashi is mefarish, so Rashi explains, as the Gemara lernt areis from dem gebrachten pasuk that we're learning from this quoted pasuk here, Nit nor as kol echad ve'echad mara be'etzboi. Not only the fact that each one of the tzaddikim is pointing to the Eibishter, hine elekeinu zeh. Nor oich as evelem b'shas meises zogen die Werte von dem pasuk zeh avai v'geimer. But each one of the tzaddikim will actually be saying what it says here in the pasuk. V'oimer, each one will say this is the Eibishter. On the far is Rashi meisif if lashon hashas. There's actually one word that Rashi adds that does not say in the Gemara. Mara be'etzboi v'oimer zeh avai v'chulu. And each one of them will say this is the Eibishter. Das heißt, b'shas dem mochel veln sein beide inyanim. As this dance is taking place, two things will happen. Aleph, mare be'etzboi, each one points to the Eibishter, and beis v'oimer zechulu. And also each one is going to express and say, this is the Eibishter. That's the way Rashi is interpreting the Gemara. That's Rashi's addition here. If them zok Taisus, on this Taisus comes and says and argues, kol echad ve'echad mare akadosh baruch hu be'etzboi shenema hine elekeinu zeh v'chulu. So what do we see here in Taisvis? It is mashmit, the aschala from pasuk v'ama b'yoymahu. Taisvis omits the first part of the pasuk where it says v'ama b'yoymahu, that on that day we will say. The main Taisvis to klar machen. So Taisvis is clarifying here as follows: as Aleph, the Gemara is blois oisen deraya shenemar oiv mara kadosh baruch hu be'etzboi. Over here, we're bringing this pasuk just for the one point that the tzaddikim will dance and point to the Eibishter. This that there will be an amire that they will speak to the Eibishter or say or express, that's not relevant over here at all. So that's why we're not quoting this. And Tosfos does not say, like Rashi, va'omer, that they're going to say. So that seems to be a very small, subtle argument over here regarding this dance that will happen. So the question, of course, here is, how do we explain these two opinions here? The machlokes between Rashi and Tosfos, the argument of Rashi and Tosfos, whether this amira that they will say about the Eibishter expressing, is that relevant for the understanding of the Gemara here or not? It says in the pasuk va'omer, but Tosfos for some reason feels like no, that does not fit into the context of our Gemara. Why not? So we have, as you see, many questions here on this Braisa, both as far as this dance of the girls. We have, as the Rabbi explained, two different statements they would say. One, that they all said equally, take a look at family, and then dividing them into different categories. And there's the Yafyafiyais, Yechasais, Mechuarais, and the Rabbi had specific questions about Yofi, what's the significance of beauty, what's the Mechuarais, what's unique about them that they're drawing attention to them, l'shem shemayim. And then all these questions here about this dance that's going to be la'asad lavai with the Eibishter and the tzaddikim, and how that connects to the dance of the girls. So to explain all of this, let's begin as follows. It says, move on upashit, it's self-understood. As das was the B'nai Yerushalayim Yotzes in the tag from Chamishasa Ba'av Yom Kippurim is given aniyim from Kedusha. These daughters of Yerushalayim coming out and dancing on such holy days is definitely something which is an expression of absolute holiness, and all being done with the absolute purity and holiness to get married in the proper way. Is b'meiloich move on. So therefore it's understood as sie haben dann nicht gemeint herausbringen sie gashmis de gemeiles, that they are not trying to express any of their physical beauty or anything that physical or material that they have. Yofi, whether beauty, ashiris, or wealth, and das gleichen, or anything similar. There's another gersei which the Rebbe is alluding to, brought in the En Yaakov, that the ones that were rich would say, look at our wealth. Just for itself. There's no value in any of this materialism for itself, and that's not what the Mishnah is telling us about these girls coming and dancing and trying to get a shidduch for themselves on such a holy date. No, rather, it's talking here about these tremendous levels that according to Torah, this makes them fitting to be a reason why someone should come and get married to them. So, ledugma. So let's take the obvious example that has to be explained, which the Rebbe pointed out before. Das was the Yafyafiyas dog and Tunui Nechem leYofi. The beautiful amongst them would say, look at beauty. Most definitely what they're referring to is the true source of what this beauty is about, the spiritual beauty. It doesn't negate the fact that they were physically beautiful, because whatever physical beauty there is all just a result of the real spiritual beauty that they have. As it's known as das was es wären geboren Kinder scheine begashmias, the fact that you have children that are born and are physically beautiful is abhängig von dem was die Anhoge von Ave Eim is bektushe v'tare v'chulu. It will depend on this, that the conduct of the father and mother together is with absolute holiness and purity, and so the purity that there is and the beauty that there is in spiritually brings about the birth of physically beautiful children. As a result, the children get beautiful garments and beautiful character, spiritually speaking. And they also are beautiful physically as well. So that's what the beauty here is speaking about. Really, the ruchni is the beauty which also trickles down into the physical beauty. Then so now looking at the milas that these girls are speaking about and dividing it into what the Mishnah is speaking about and what the Braisa is speaking about, so there are two separate milas that we have to look at. Aleph, the mila pratis, was is da by der Bas Yerushalayim b'miyuchad. The individual, the specific level that there is, that this Bas Yerushalayim specifically and especially is expressing that she has. Beis, the mila klalis was alle b'nois Yerushalayim haben. Then there's a Maila, there's something special about all B'nai Yerushalayim that they all equally have. Die Maila wird übergegeben zu Kinder und Kindskinder ad soif kol hadeiros. And this is something that's unique, that every single one of the B'nai Yerushalayim has, and gives it over to her children and children's children until the end of all time. And in them is the chiluk zwischen the Mishnah and the Braisa. This is the difference between what the Mishnah is speaking about, that all Bnei Yerushalayim would equally say, and what the Braisa speaks about when it divides it into three categories. In the Mishnah, the Mishnah focuses on a general Maila that all Bnei Yerushalayim have. Aleph, by Yed Bas Yerushalayim is Doa Maila Ruchnis. Every single Bas Yerushalayim has this Ruchnisdige level, was mitzadem is in Sug von Isha Yiras Hashem Hitasal. And therefore, every Jewish girl could say about herself that she's God-fearing. Beis, the Maila is by ihr eingewurzelt. This Meile is rooted so deeply in her, in Aneufen, das wird sich übergeben zu die Kinder, welche sie hatten is mechanech. It will be given over to the children that she will give birth to and she will educate and raise. This is Merum is in zweiten Pasuk, was the Mishnah bringt, Tnu la mi priya dea, v'halelua bashar masa. What does this Pasuk mean? Not only does she have her own Yerushalayim, her own Maila that she has for herself, which is mentioned in this whole, in the Eishes Chayil, it speaks about all the Mailas that there are, Gemalasu Geimer, Batas, Miprikapel, and so on, is he, tis halal, what, where, so that's her own praise for herself, not oich mitzad ihre Kinder. But the praise is also because this is something that carries over to the children. Priyadel, the fruits of her hands, which are her children, or Maisel, which is also her children, is Tanula and Ve'alua Bashadim. Give her and praise her because of what she gives over to her children. That's what the Braisa focuses on. The general Maila that is there by every single Yid equally. Mashenke in the Braisa. Prati is the Ruchni is the Gemeile von jeder Sug von Bnei Yerushalayim Kedlekaman. The Braisa focuses on individual Mailas that there are in different categories of Bnei Yerushalayim that are different, as will be explained. So this obviously has to be explained over here. What are we speaking about when we say that there is one Maila that's equal by all the Klal Yisrael, all of Bnei Yerushalayim, and they all could say that they are Yiras Hashem, Isha Yiras Hashem, and what are the specific Mailas of each individual category? What is the certainty as Yed the Bas Yerushalayim is in Suk from Isha Yiras Hashem? That no matter who she is and whatever level she is, every single Bas Yerushalayim definitely could be classified as a Isha Yiras Hashem. And Adas is Eichen and Eifen from Priya Dea Maaseh Kanal, and so much so that this is something that has bearing on her children, or it's given over and she will imbue it in her children. Zog the Rov the Bnei Yerushalayim. This is what the Bnei Yerushalayim are saying, and that's what the Mishnah emphasizes. This Bacher, young man, raise up your eyes and see. Do not look at beauty, look at the family. What exactly are they saying? Raise up your eyes. What they're saying is, do not look at all of these beautiful things you may see, whether spiritual beauty or even or physical beauty. As you can see it externally when you look with your eyes, or looking and observing ordinarily. Do not look just as a regular observer and look at the beauty that you see, and this includes in the muvum funai, any beauty that attracts and gets your attention, including all kinds of beauty, physical, spiritual, and any other milas that may be. Rather, raise up your eyes and look deeper. See something higher. Also the term that it says in the pasuk, when you raise up your eyes and you look higher, that zayin urumi bara, you'll come and discover and see the Eibishter that creates this world. Which means mit der hecheren und pnimiisdigen Blick, you have to look in a higher way and look deeper to find, to look deeper inside to see a certain point that's there in every single Yid. Zen, dem Scheidisch und Makke, von wann stammen und kommen herab die Meiles. See the source of all other Meiles that you may externally see, but go a step deeper to find what's really the source of all those individual Meiles. Und das meint Tani Nachal b'mishpacha. In this sense over here, when they say look at family, the expression of family over here refers to this, to the deeper Maila, the source of all other Mailas. Was in breiteren Sinn, in a broader sense, using the term mishpacha in the broader sense, meint mishpacha nit nur die Eltern and cholo. Mishpacha does not only refer to the parents, nor alle was haben a Wirkung und Ashpa auf ihr Ruchnis de Gemos. It includes also anybody else that added an influence on her, who she is, spiritually speaking. Kailol, ir melamdim, or machanchim, including her teachers, educators. Wie begefindt, bekamen bekäumis bechazal. As werden batzeichenten gerufen Älteren von dem Talmud und Mechunach. Chazal in many places point out that a teacher, an educator, is considered to be the parent of their student and of the one that they educate. Ubefrat, ubemiyuchad, and more specifically and especially, what's relevant over here in the broader sense of what the term mishpacha means, vibalt as lashem mishpacha yemar al kol ha'am, an expression that the Metzudas David says that the expression of mishpacha really refers to all Yidden, one family equally. Das was he is mishpachas Yisrael. What she's saying is, look at family. Look at the family of Klal Yisrael, that we all come from the same family. Bas, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. We all come from the same Imois. The Imois from Vemen sie haben B'Yerusha ihre Yiddische Tchunis. We all come from the same place, and therefore we all have the same Jewish characteristics, the same Jewish instincts. That's the source of all other milas, and which every single Yid equally possesses. So if you'll raise up your eyes and you'll look deeper, what you'll discover is, as Aleph, number one, even in those that you may not notice, any spiritual mila they have is the snabach. That's only externally. If you look deeper, they are also part of the family, of the Yiddish family. Is he in Sug fin Isha Yiras Hashem itisala? She definitely has and possesses this quality of being a Isha Yiras Hashem, and she's praiseworthy. Chaj devail is as farbarden, even if temporarily it's concealed. Beis Nachmer, additionally, as the emeskite from the milas from Bnei Yerushalayim bashtet nitten neu. You'll realize what the true quality of a Jewish girl is, not something you see externally, her beauty. The milas v'zizan zich b'chitzonius, whatever other milas you could see externally, val sheker achein v'hevel hayofi. Whatever mila you see externally, and this includes not only the physical beauty, but even any other spiritual milas that you can see on first observation and just externally, is all in vain. That's not the real source of the beauty. Now, dafke the milas v'zizan in an anoifun from mishpacha. Only those milas that come from the fact that she comes from the same family. Das zenen Yerusha milas was given zechibe midar ledar. Those milas that you inherit, that's part of your DNA, that is there. It's intrinsic to the whole Jewish existence, and therefore you get it from the same imois, being part of the same family. That's the real mila, and not only is that the real mila, but that's actually the source and the cause for all other milas that come out from there. That's what the Mishnah is speaking about. This general mila, that's the exact same by every single Yid. If them is the Braise Moisef, now the Braise comes in as and says, now let's pay attention and see to what there is also in addition externally. As noch then, after you make sure to get the attention of the young man to look deeper and see the source of where this beauty comes from, Isha, Yiras Hashem itisala, the fact that every single Jewish girl is praiseworthy with this level of Yiras Shemayim, as mekukt umedezet, the atzmi is the gemayla mishpacha from Yeda Bas Yisrael, you look deeper and you see much deeper the essential level that there is in every single Jewish girl. Was mitzadam is Isha Yiras Hashem, and therefore they're all Yiras Hashem. Demolt, now you come to step 2. Kennen dem tis halal areingenommen werden. So now you can start looking and also include in the praise and of this girl, and to look at her qualities, nit nar Yiras Hashem, not only that deep Yiras Hashem, the source of everything, not oich irchein v'yofi, but also now to see that from there it also comes down, also in addition to the external qualities she has, the grace and the beauty. Varum damol zen ze oich. Because then when you realize the source of what these external milas are, that they're coming from something much deeper, and it's what's deeper that is coming out and being expressed even in external milas, so then you can recognize even the external milas for what they really are, just an expression of something that's really there much deeper inside of her. Und der Fahr gefindt man in der Breise, als jeder Sog von der Bnei Yerushalayim hat noch herausgesagt, sein Protis die Gemeila an Niglas Veniris. After all the Bnei Yerushalayim said the statement with one Maila that they wanted to get the attention of the Bacher to see the source of all Mailas, following that they each said their own Maila that they have. Yafyafiyais, the B'nai Yerushalayim, was mezet begoli, zeh ruchnis the gemailas, those beautiful ones, which means these B'nai Yerushalayim, that this that they have very deep inside of them also comes out externally and it's expressed, and you could see their spiritual milas they have and the beauty from zeh tchunas hanefesh, which expresses itself in the character that they have. Kanal sivav as yofi gashmi nemtzach from yofi ruchni, that they go together, the physical beauty and the spiritual beauty. Und the far sagen seit nu einechem le yofi. You could now pay attention to this beauty as well. Die was malasan is boifun gol. Those that their internal mila, the source that comes from a very deep place, expresses itself externally as well. So now they say, pay attention also to our external beauty as well. Miyuchasais, on the other hand, those that have prestigious lineage. What does this mean? You look at them, you can't see so open and expressed their own good character that they have. Since they come from good family, and here good family refers to from Bali Teire Umidis Tevis Midar. Here we're talking about family in the more narrower sense, in their family, that they're people that learn Teire and have good character from one generation to the next. Kemen sein sicher, so you can be sure, as sie haben euch sehr Töchter mechanach gewähnt, zu gehen und führen sich in dem Derech von seiner Mishpacha. Definitely the daughters of this family are being educated and raised to go in the way of this family with this good character and learning Torah. Und auf demselben Weg wollen sie mechanach sein euch sehr Kinder, and therefore they will definitely also educate their children in the same way. Und die Pfarrer sagen sie, tnu einechem le Mishpacha. Pay attention to the family, meaning the mishpacha and the moving on mitzumtzum, the mishpacha pratis. Here, family is in the narrower sense referring to specifically this family that educates from one generation to the next. A beautiful family. Mechuarais. What are the mechuarais? Azas sug b'nai Yerushalayim in velechem izet lit milas ruchnius. This is a category of girls that you look at them externally, you see no milas whatsoever. Not even if you look back a generation before to their parents. Or not even a spiritual parent to look at an educator that set them right, that educated them properly. So therefore, when it says mechuara is ugly, it means both spiritually and as a result, also physically. Nevertheless, they are also B'nai Yerushalayim. The very fact that they understand who they really are and what their identity is, now, the Rebbe is actually focusing on this, on the very fact that they know, that they are ugly, and that externally they cannot express that true inner beauty that exists in them, and therefore they're on a very low level. This itself brings out in them, expresses within them a certain bitterness, a certain humility, and a bittul that is something that draws out something very deep in them. And therefore, not looking at the fact that they had nobody to learn from, and therefore had no way to develop their milas that they may have, even externally, but independently, the situation they find themselves in causes them to draw deeper and to bring out a Kabbalah soil to accept the yoke of heaven and do what Hashem wants in an even deeper way. This itself draws out from them this very deep feeling. And therefore, it's them specifically that express this and say that you're coming to marry me. Do it with the purity of doing it for the sake of heaven. They're only interested in marrying someone that's only doing this purely for the sake of heaven. Not thinking about what are the milas of my kala and what is it that she has and so on. So Adarab, because they are the lowest, this draws out something much deeper in them to connect in a much deeper way, and it's more pure. It's completely l'shem shemayim. And durch dem kommt nach heraus begoli, as euch zij haben die Meile von Mishpacha, and therefore this does actually then now even reveal externally that the deeper Meile that he had, being part of the Jewish family, comes out. And therefore, as we said before, even the ugly ones, would also say, zusammen mit alle b'nai Yerushalayim, wie in the Mishnah 10, Einecha b'mishpacha, look at us, we're part of the Yiddish family. Warum die Zerbrochenkeit, was a jüdische Tochter hat davon, weil sie ist von den Mechuares, the very fact that yes, she's on a very low level, she has nothing to show for herself, but nevertheless, this itself causes her to bring out something deeper inside. Anke Meile Ruchnis nimmt sich von dem, was sie ist mit Mishpachas Yisrael. So there's no personal, individual Meile that she can show she has. So therefore, what does she have? She only has this, my Jewish identity, that I'm part of the Yiddish family. Abbas Sora Rivka Rachel Valeya. Und der Fahr ist in Margish, wie es ist mar Osveches Avayle Kechas. She actually has a sense to feel in a much deeper way what it means to let go of Hashem, what it means to depart from godliness, because this is where she is. This is what's touching her and hurting her, and therefore this brings out such a deep connection to the Eibishter and to the Yiddish family. So this explains the three categories that the Braisa speaks about. And these muchuares that may seem to be the lowest and the ugly ones we see now, what this brings them to actually sort of outshine all the other ones. The Chiluk Kanal, zwischen the Mishnah and the Braisa. Now, moving on from here to the continuation of the Gemara, which discusses the dance, La'asad Lavi, with the Tzadikim. So the distinction that it says here in the Mishnah and the Braisa, as in the Mishnah, the Mishnah speaks about that general Meile that all Bnei Yerushalayim possess equally. Und die Braisa redt wegen die Protia Meiles von jedem Suk. The Braisa speaks about the individual Meile that every category has. Sagt sich euch heraus in dem Unterschied beteichen vehemshecha in Yanim von die Mishnah und Braisa. This is also expressed if you look at the continuation of what it says following this in the Mishnah and also in the Braisa. In der Mochel haben sich ausgedrückt die Achtus und Shalom, was ist gewähnt zwischen den Bnei Yerushalayim. One very general point that we see here is that all Bnei Yerushalayim are coming together to the same area. And not only in the same area, but they're actually dancing together in one circle. This expresses a tremendous unity between them. Imagine each one is sort of competing with their friend to find a good shidduch. But nevertheless, they come to the same place and they're actually dancing in a circle together. Was the far and the unity amongst them and the care for one another is expressed by the fact that they would all go out with the same simple white garment and it was borrowed in order not to embarrass someone that doesn't have. Und the mit is move on the Hemshach Mishnah. This explains the continuation of the Mishnah. V'cheinu oimer, the pasuk says, "Tzena or ena b'nais tzion b'melech shleima." Go out, daughters of Tzia, and look at Melech Shleima. Who's Melech Shleima? B'melech sha'ashalem shalai. This is the king that peace is his, the Eibishter. Das is the Asbara. This pasuk the Mishnah quotes here is explaining what's going on. Wie azoi ken sein achtes v'shalom zwischen die alle Bnei Yerushalayim. How is it possible so many different Bnei Yerushalayim that come from opposite sides from the spectrum and their level and so on, but they all come together as one in unity? They go out and they look and they connect to Melech Shleima. Wenn das ist verbunden mit Melech Shalom Shalom, when they're connected to the Eibishter, he's the source of peace. Was macht Shalom zwischen alle Bnei Yerushalayim, and therefore this brings peace amongst all Bnei Yerushalayim. We're all connected to the Eibishter. That explains. That's the conclusion of the Mishnah, where the theme of the Mishnah is expressing the equal statement, the one statement that all Bnei Yerushalayim together said. Und die Achtos is auf zwei Eifanim. So now this unity that we're speaking about here between these Bnei Yerushalayim is expressed on two different levels, connecting to the level of Achtos in the Mishnah and the level of Achtos in the Braisa, as the Rabbi will explain. Aleph, one level of unity is mitzad nekuda pnimishe behen. There's a very deep point inside every yid. Herzachon was mitzias. So over there, all that sensed is we're the same in one. We make up one entity. The mitzias from Bnei Yerushalayim on kein chalukim. Here it's one entity, Bnei Yerushalayim, and that there's no distinctions between one and another. Beis, but then there's another way of unity. Beis afil mitzad hamaylas parati yeshebehen. Even looking at the individual character or level that they were on. Was ein day saying v'chulu shavos, which begins, of course, in the fact that their opinions are not the same, their approach, their perspective is not the same, and it trickles down from there in every single part of their personality and life. In them is jeder eine anders von zweite. In this, each one is very different than the other. But nevertheless, there's still there, even on that level, a peace and a unity between them. Because even there, they complement one another. Whatever Milo one has and the other doesn't, so they all make up, they join together to complement one another. These two concepts of unity is the difference between what the Mishnah speaks about and what the Brisa speaks about. In the Mishnah, wegen dem Klal from Bnei Yerushalayim from Yidden. The Mishnah speaks about all Yidden as one Klal, one unit. They make up one entity. On the Brisa, the Brisa where there's an expression of the details, the different categories, as the Shalom va'achtos is given nit the far was the einen Battle geworden the Meiles Prati is, that what the Brisa is doing, it's actually enhancing and extending that unity. That the unity should not only consist of this, that I have to walk away and drop my own personal milas that I have and go back deeper inside that one point that we are all the same. Das heißt, sie haben sich damit nicht angehört, that you don't sense it all, you don't pay attention at all to the specific personality and milas that you have. No, adarabah. The Brisa is not taking what's inside and bringing it out and extending it further, even into the details of where everyone's different. Nicht guckendig auf die Chelukim, gluyim zwischen den milas, Shainis und Bnei Yerushalayim. Not looking at the fact that there are many differences here that you can clearly see between the different Bnei Yerushalayim. And they're focusing on it. They're expressing the mila that I have and the other does not have. But nevertheless, however, even there, you draw out the inner nukuda of the mila that every Jew has equally, and it could also be sensed and felt even there when you are focusing on your own personal mila. You understand that whatever personal mila you have was only given to you to be utilized for that kavana penimis, for that deeper point of your connection. And therefore, in that sense, you're ready with your mila to be there ba'achdas with someone else that has a different mila, and you can complement one another. The mitzvah mevuer was the Gemara bringt behemshach to the Brisa. So this explains why the Gemara, when it brings following the Brisa, so what does it bring? The story of the dance of the tzaddikim lasad lavei. The Maime Oster Kadosh Baruch Hu lasis machal tzaddikim chulu v'chol echad ve'echad marabetz boy chulu. And what's unique about this dance is that every tzaddik will point with his finger. What does this mean? Was das meint, as jeder tzaddik wird anweisen auf Kadosh Baruch Hu mit sein Etzba. Every tzaddik will point with his finger to the Eibishter, let sein darga vasage, his level, his comprehension. We don't find this ever before in history, such a concept. You have Yitzis Mitzrayim, Matan Torah, or whatever, the time period when all Klal Yisrael come together, so they all accept the Torah equally together. Here, all tzaddikim, v'amech kolim tzaddikim, Yidden are dancing together, but every tzaddik individually points with his finger to the Eibishter. Und von deswegen wollen sie dann alle sein vereinigt in ein Machel. The still will all be unified in one dance. This is the point that the Brisa speaks about, where every person feels his individual mila that he has, and nevertheless is able to join together with the other tzaddikim and point to the Eibishter to join together, bring all the milas together. The prati is now to take what it says in the Brisa and further break it down, that there are two levels here, and this will explain to us the difference between how Rashi understands this story of the dance of the tzaddikim and how Taisus understands the dance of the tzaddikim. So as the Rebbe pointed out before, it seems like a very subtle difference, whether the tzaddikim are going to be speaking and say the pasuk that the Gemara quotes, Hine Elokeinu Zeh, or the Gemara just quotes the pasuk, Hine Elokeinu Zeh Kevinu Le, but the tzaddikim won't be speaking. But there's a very big difference here. So bepratius, looking at this in more detail, is in dem zweiten Eufen von Shalom va'achtus, Euch mitzad apratim, speaking about this second level of peace and unity, which includes also the details of every individual tzaddik's personality and aveda. There are two ways how this peace and this union comes about. And speaking over here regarding the subject at hand, in the shalom zwischen the tzaddikim, the peace amongst the tzaddikim. Aleph, one approach is Afapi as jeder tzaddik is anders von die zweiten bavidose madrigose. Every single tzaddik is very different in his serving the Eibishter, in his level that he's on. But if the Eibishter that's sitting amongst them, Was bei dem Eibishter sind doch die alle Chelukim Madreges kein Stieren nicht eine zum Zweiten. By the Eibishter, none of these individual levels are a contradiction. They're all here for one purpose. The Eibishter created all these levels. It's all his desire. It's all for his purpose. And therefore there is no contradiction between one and the other. Is Baruch Hu Oster Shalom b'Mraimov, when you're in the presence of such greatness, so there's peace that comes about in all these levels, zwischen sei, as alle tzaddikim, zusammen mit zeire chilukim, that all of these tzaddikim, true, they're not ignoring the differences between them. They're focusing on it, and they have those differences, but nevertheless, sollen stehen bis achtes kulam yachad in ein machal. They could stand all together in the same circle because the Eibishter is amongst them. So there, when the Eibishter is amongst them, all the details are bottled to this one, to this one for this one purpose for the Eibishter. So that's one point over here. Another point here is es ist da a Ashpa vehiskalalos von einem mit dem Zweiten. That the individual mila that every tzaddik has is not just a mila that he has, but it's expressed. He's giving, he's influencing another with the mila he has. And therefore what happens is the milas are actually complementing one another. As I said before, this is the way that Rebbe is putting it here now. That the point is that we're actually utilizing the benefit that there is in each one of the milas. Jeder eine is mashpia von seiner Avodah und Madrege zum Zweiten. Each one is giving and contributing of what he has on his level to the other. Bis es verta es skalalus ves achtes gemura zwischen alle Chelukim Madreges von Tzadikim. And all these different levels come together in a beautiful symmetry. It creates one beautiful achtus of all the levels together. Okay, so in other words, earlier the Rebbe spoke about a level of achdus where there are no details to be spoken about altogether. We're just talking about the nekudah pnimis of a yid where everyone's the same. There are no details. You just drop that, forget that. You go back into the essence of the soul where there's nothing other than that. That's in the Mishnah. But even here in the Braisa, when we deal with the details of every person's personality and his maila and his aveda, there's still two ways how to introduce achdus in this situation. Either it's bringing the greatness of the Eibishter, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yeshiv B'neim, and therefore even when you're focusing on your Aveda, you understand that in the presence of the Eibishter, it's not a contradiction to somebody else's Aveda. We're serving ultimately the same goal. Or it's even deeper than that. The very Maila itself that you have is fully expressed, and you give of your Maila, you influence another with your Maila, but then you're able to take the benefit of all the milas together and reveal the mila that it has and what it contributes and how it joins together with everyone else. So that brings the mila even deeper into the details. Und das ist der Chiddush von Rashi. Now we can understand what Rashi adds with that one word that he adds to the Gemara. Kol echad ve'echad mare be'etzboi ve'oimer ze havaya v'chulu. That each one would not only point with their finger, but there was another detail. Each one would say, each one would speak. Das heißt, jeder Tzaddik wird euch sagen, mashpia sein. Speaking means each Tzaddik is not going to feel the presence of the Eibishter and therefore be quiet and get lost in the presence of such greatness, but rather each Tzaddik is going to be giving. To the alle andere Tzaddikim. Each one is going to be speaking and giving to the others. Shebemachal that are there in this dance. Von sein, avoid the madrege from his level. So this achdus here has to reach into a much deeper place. The achdus is even when the individual avodah you have is fully expressed. So much so that you're sharing to others what you have. So, but this is not so the way Taisus understands this Gemara here. As in a machal is in a machal given nor mara kadosh baruch hu betzboi. In the circle, in the dance here, yes, they all pointed to the Eibishter, meaning we're talking about every tzaddik with their individual level. But this that each one should express and speak is nit to the andere tzaddikim imachal. They do not speak and give to anyone else that's there with them. Als hashpa. If they would be speaking, it's just to praise Hashem, but not that each one is trying to give from his individual maila to another tzaddik and the other to him to join together these individual mailas. That's not the case here. According to Taisus' understanding of this braisa here, is that shalom va'achdus shebemachal, the unity and the peace in this dance, it's not by having the expression of each level and then having them join together to create this union. As will be explained right over here in this next place. So the Rabbi explains this as follows. Der Inyan von Mochel, what's the idea of a dance? In general, the fact that tzaddikim are going to be dancing together. Why not sitting? Why not standing? They're going to be dancing together. In an igul, in a circle, is merames of b'chinas beligvul. This hints to something which is endless. She'ein lo yisayf. K'mavur b'Rabbeinu B'chaya. This is something Rabbeinu B'chaya al Torah explains what a circle represents. When also the Kadosh Baruch Hu lasses machal tzaddikim, when it says here that Hashem will make this dance for tzaddikim, what it means is as their tainug v'simcha chulu, the pleasure and the joy that zayin l'maylam m'didavak bala will be breaking out of all boundaries. This haste, what this means is v'takezayin kol echad v'echad mare be'etz ba'oi. Each one is pointing with his finger. Everybody expressing his level of Avodas Hashem, his unique personal connection that he accomplished within his connection to the Eibishter. Nor, das wird sein in Aneufen, als es wird leichen die Nekuda Atzmis, the Kesser von seinem Madrege, was es Lamayl mit Didavak Bala. In his individual level, the most deepest point, the most intense point of what his individual level accomplished and reached, that essence of his level of Aveda will be expressed here. And therefore it says Marabed's boy in the circle, referring to the unlimited aspect of his level of Avedas Hashem. That's what it means here in this dance. So now, according to this, we could very well understand what Tosfos' approach is. Why each one of them will not be speaking. Und der Fall lernen Tosfos, so therefore Tosfos learns here, as da is nit gewenken skalalos hamadreges. Over here, when you have that deepest point of the Aveda of every individual that's expressed, you cannot have an inclusion of these levels with one another. Weil skalalos is shaykh nar in ispashtos. Including one level with another, allowing two levels to merge with one another and join, that's only when you go away from the intensity of the very source, of that unlimited source of what characterizes this Aveda. When you come a little bit lower down, when the intensity is not as powerful, so here they can merge together. So here it's possible when you lower down the intensity of the Aveda, so one could be included with the other, could support the other, could complement the other, and they could join together. Aber in der Nekuda Atzmis von ein Madrege is nitoke not for zweite Darge. But if each one of them that's pointing with his finger is expressing how his Aveda was so unlimited, the intensity, that Nekuda of his Aveda that's so unique and how it expresses his unlimited connection to Hashem, so the intensity of this level cannot join with the intensity of any other level. Was mizagin, therefore the Tosfos says, so what brought about the unity here? As the shalom va'achtus shebemachil, a peace and union in such a kind of dance, where the concept of dance is that everybody is reaching to that unlimited point of his level, is blois and the ersten oifen anal sifyud. It's only possible by bringing the Eibishter inside, by having the Eibishter amongst them, and therefore when the Eibishter is amongst them, that's higher than any individual Aveda, and therefore over here everybody becomes bottled to the Eibishter. That's Tosfos' approach. So even when we're dealing with the individual level and bringing Achdus there, still sof, it's all through HaKadosh Baruch Hu Beinayim, and especially because we're talking about the highest point of everybody's individual Aveda. There's no other way how you can bring it together without the Eibishter, which is higher. Und das ist euch Masse mit Maime Chazal. This goes along with what the Gemara tells us, as la'asid is kol echad nichve mechupasish chaveret. The Gemara says an astounding thing, that then every person will be burnt by his friend's chuppah. What does this mean? Why is everyone, seems like almost like some kind of a competition there, or something that each one is getting burnt from what the other has. But rather, what does this mean? Chuppah is bechinis choife, that it's something which hovers over. Pei besegel. Makif, it means it hovers, it's higher. The keser from the tzaddik umadregasi. The highest point, the keser of a person's aveda refers to this level where every person's unique aveda is expressed with the fullest intensity to an unlimited degree. On in chuppah the keser is nitoken eskalos. When you come to that point of chuppah and keser, there can't be any inclusion. Adarabe, then zweitens chuppah is nichve michupasish chavera. The contrary, what happens is each person with their chuppah, the other one gets burnt. They separate from one another. It's so powerful that they can't join together with another level. In Ha'ara 43, the Rabbi says that this is similar to what Chassidus tells us about what happened in the world of Toyu. Okay, so this is all Taisus explaining why it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yoshev B'neihem that brings the Achdus amongst them, and the Tzaddikim themselves had to be quiet. V'yeshloimar, so now we come to Rashi, that Rashi takes us even a step deeper. As Rashi Rashi explains this, Ados v'zayin no b'tchilas mandalos. What Taisus says is true, but this level is only in the first stage of after Mashiach comes. The Nachaber, however, following this, then there's an even deeper level of unity that's revealed that comes from the very essence of the Eibishter himself. Was Atzmos is neise alle hofchim kechad. By the very essence of the Eibishter, all opposites, even with all of the intensity of the opposites, are still all unified as one. When the very essence of the Eibishter is revealed, that Zayin, the Iskalalos from alle Madregas Tzadikim, so here you can join together all of these levels of each individual tzaddik, including with the greatest intensity of their level. But when it's connected to the very essence of the Eibishter, they're all one. B'shalom and v'achdas amitis, with the absolute peace and unity.